Hello guys, good evening. Welcome to the IS Network. For today, we are going to discuss the current affairs of 20th of September. Join me as soon as it's possible. Then I will start the discussion of today's current affairs, that is 20th of September, right? There are some of the topics which are in the news, guys. Increasing India's external debt in the wake of COVID-19 situation. We are suffering especially from external debt that has also been gone up, as well as our fiscal deficit. Some 2 days back, I also discussed that our fiscal deficit that is also increasing. The Drug Comptroller General of India, I will also be discussing certain points related to it. So the third topic for today, it is biological emergency. As the COVID-19, it has been declared as the biological emergency. Why and what all provisions they have been used? ScrubTyphus, again it is on the news in some areas of India. So this type of news, it is basically getting busted. So, and the fourth topic for today, guys, it is vehicle scrappage policy. What exactly it is and why the vehicle scrappage policy it has become essential for a developing country like India, right? As well as the IPO, initial public offer, what exactly it is and what is the actual relevance of IPOs, especially in the market of India, right? So let's move on to the first topic for today, guys. India's external debt, that is the India's external debt at 3%. It has been increased to the 3%. One of the recent report has been released by the Ministry of Finance that India's external debt of India has been increased by the 3%. So what exactly it is, and first you need to know about it, what all things are basically consisting the part, especially in the India's external debt. So let's discuss about it. See, external debt means any of the thing, any of the debt that India is basically purchasing from the foreign nations, purchase from the foreign nation. This is something so called external debt. So there are certain types of the external debt. First most important type of thing, it is, guys, short-term external debt, and the second one, it is long-term external debt. See, the categorization, it is really important. You need to remember the categorization. Long-term external debt. So under the short-term external debt, any of the debt that is being purchased by the government of India for less than 1 year from the individual, either from the individual or from the companies or from the international institutions, it is called as short-term debt. Long-term debt, it is basically purchased for more than 1 year, and government basically used to purchase it more or less. More preferably, government generally used to purchase the long-term debt, especially from the international institutions like IMF, World Bank, or Asian Development Bank, like this kind of institution. Furthermore, there is also a subdivision of the external debt of India. One is sovereign debt. One is guys, sovereign debt, and the another one is non-sovereign debt. Please try to remember these type of categories. Non-sovereign debt. So under the sovereign debt, guys, government of India generally used to release the securities like bond, especially in the foreign market, So that is why they can get the foreign currency, right? This is something so called foreign currency. They can easily get it. That particular debt, it is called as sovereign debt. Non-sovereign debt, it is basically called as we haven't generally government of India do not release any such kind of thing, especially in the foreign market. And even though they are just borrowing from the foreign markets, that is called as non-sovereign debt. See, this categorization, that is really important. Please try to remember it. Sovereign debt and non-sovereign debt. Under the sovereign debt, government is basically releasing certain kind of things, right? Certain kind of things like bonds debentures, especially in the foreign market, to gain the foreign currency. And in the non-sovereign debt, government does not release any kind of thing. We are just borrowing it, we are purchasing it, right? Let's move on. Let's discuss about it, guys. The component, the largest component of India's external debt, very important. The largest component, it is, guys, we are basically borrowing it, especially from the international institutions like IMF, World Bank. This particular component, it is consisting the largest part of our India's external debt. The second, it is also called as, guys, the second part, it is by the external commercial borrowing, right? Commercial borrowing, it means the government, it is borrowing from the individuals as well as from the companies, right? So these are two most important components, especially of the foreign debt. One more thing I just want to tell you in this regard, guys, NRI deposits. Please try to remember it. NRI deposits, it also forms the part of India's external debt. One more thing, guys, this is really important type of thing. If UPSC will be putting this kind of a statement that NRI deposit does not form the part of India's external debt, that will definitely be the wrong kind of a statement. NRI deposits that actually form under the accounts it actually forms the account, it forms a part of our capital account, and under the capital account, guys, it is also a liability of us. It needed to be paid whenever they will be demanding, especially from government of India or from the sovereign banks, right? Let's move on to the second topic for today. I discussed in a very detailed type of way what exactly the India's external debt and what all parts are basically consisting the India's external debt, and what are the types, all of the things, and what is NRI deposit, which under which account it can be included, right? So the second topic for today, guys, drug controller general of India, what exactly it is and what are the key things related to it, right? So drug controller general of India, what exactly it is? See, general of India, it is basically a powerful body. Please try to remember it. Those all bodies which they are having the approval kind of powers, those all bodies are really important. It falls under the aegis of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And what is the work of this particular body, guys? The main work of this body, it is related to the approval of new drugs, right? Approval of certain new drugs. Please try to remember it, certain new drugs. I have mentioned over here certain words. So certain words, it is really important. It means all of the drugs are not being approved by the drug controller general of India. There are two other type of bodies which they are having the work in this regard. The certain drugs, it means the IV related injectable vaccines and some other certain drugs, very small fraction of the drugs, they are being approved by the drug controller general of India. And if any of the malpractice that is still existing in our healthcare system, that can be basically on that particular thing or activity, the node can be taken by drug controller general of India. Very important thing, right? So other bodies in this regard becomes really important, guys. CDS को very important body, especially formed under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, and this body, Central Drugs and Standards Body, Standards Authorization Body, guys, falls under the aegis of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Very powerful kind of body. What is the work of, guys, CDS को? Other than Drug Controller General of India, this body is having the sole authority to approve the new drugs, approve the new and all new drugs, especially in the territories of India. Very important. Please try to remember all of the points related to CDS co. Falls under the aegis of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, has been established under Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, right? And guys, if any other kind of drugs that is to be approved, the first permission, the nod, it is to be taken especially from CDSCO. And drug related standardization of drugs, the norms are also being released by the CDSCO, right? So I discussed each and everything in this regard. Let's move on to the one more topic, guys, one more body that is related to it, that is National Pharmaceutical Pricing Agency. Very important body, pricing agency, that is also related to the drugs, right? National Pharmaceutical Pricing Agency, but the concerned ministry, it is really important. See, those all bodies which you think that it can fall under this ministry, and inversely ministry under which they fall, so these kind of bodies can be basically put in the actual UPSC exam. The agency, even though the actual work of the NPPA, it is to fix the price of bulk drugs as well as the imported drugs. Price of the imported drugs can also be fixed. Certain imported drugs price can also be fixed by NPPA, but actually please try to remember it does not fall under the aegis of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It falls under the aegis of Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizer. So that is why it becomes really important. It falls under a different ministry from which you actually think about that, right? So NPPA, it is also a standardization body that is basically making the efforts that give certain kind of recommendations related to the standardization as well as price fixation of the drugs. They are being approved by the CDSCO in India, right? So I discussed each and everything in this regard. What exactly the Drug Comptroller General of India, what exactly the work of it, what is a drug, how it can approve certain kind of drugs in India, and what are the other bodies they are also working especially in the country like India in case of the health sector. Let's move on to the third topic for today, guys. It is COVID-19 as the biological disaster or biological emergency or disaster, right? So what exactly it is and why it has been declared as a biological disaster. Very important, guys. Biological disaster, it has been basically declared by the government of India. So under which of the act it has been declared? First, try to remember one fact, guys. It is the all India or the whole India basis or throughout India basis, it is the first biological disaster that has been notified, actually that has been notified by Government of India. Please try to remember, UPSC can also put this kind of a statement that it is the first biological all India or throughout India basis disaster has been declared by Government of India. As of now or prior to this, any kind of disaster was not declared as a biological disaster throughout India scale basis, right? The second most important thing is, guys, by using which of the act, which of the provisions it has used a Disaster Management Act of 2005. This particular by actually declaring during the declaration of this particular biological disaster, certain provisions of Disaster Management Act were also used. A Disaster Management Act of 2005, they were actually used. And the third most important thing it is related to it is, guys, COVID-19. I in the earlier lectures as well, I also discussed, guys, RNA based virus. RNA based virus can affect the respiratory system of any of the patient, as well as the test that is being conducted for COVID-19, it is RT-PCR test, so that the respiratory system can easily be checked of the patient, right? So let's also discuss about the Disaster Management Act of 2005. Becomes really important and relevant for all of the students to go through it, right? So Disaster Management Act, it basically gives the instructions to the central government, and by using the provisions of it, central government can notify any of the disease or disaster as a notified disaster, right? Notified disaster. Other provisions of the Disaster Management Act, guys, it also gives certain recommendation. Disaster Management Act of 2005, it basically gives the instructions to set up National Disaster Management Authority at the national level, so that any kind of disaster can be basically handled in a very better type of way. And subsequent structure of the under the Disaster Management Act, it is also important. State disaster management authorities, they are also to be set up, and district disaster management authority, it is also to be set up on the district level, so that the decentralization based management of any of the disaster can be basically managed in a very effective type of way, right? So NDMA, who is the chairperson of the NDMA, that is really important. The chairperson of the NDMA, that is the Prime Minister, right? The Prime Minister, it is basically the chairperson of NDMA. Please try to remember it. Nowadays UPSC is basically putting this kind of statement. The Prime Minister, it is a chairperson of National Disaster Management Authority, right? And please try to remember it. It is basically statutory body. It is a statutory body, very important statutory body, and it can give the instructions to the State Disaster Management Authority as well as to the district ones, and chaired by the Prime Minister of India, right? So by using the certain provisions of this particular act, and one more thing, guys, that can easily be put down in the UPSC paper as well. The lockdown has been imposed by which of the provisions? There is no as such provision that was used other than the Disaster Management Act. The very same Disaster Management Act was also used to control the medical emergency or biological disaster in India, so that the nationwide lockdown that has also been imposed by using the provisions of the Disaster Management Act as well, right? So I discussed each and everything in this regard. What is COVID-19, what is biological emergency, and what all things they have been basically powers they have been used, and what under and to which of the authorities the powers are basically vested in, right? Let's move on to the next topic for today, guys. It is ScrubTyphus. Again, it is in the news, and in which part of the India it is basically being busted, right? So ScrubTyphus, very important kind of disease, guys. It can be asked. First most important thing, it is basically, see, any of the disease, if you are reading any of the disease, the pattern should be same. First you need to know about either it is being spread, either who is the vector, who is the actual transmitter of this particular or any of the disease. Guys, the bacteria, it is basically the transmitter of this particular disease, that is ScrubTyphus. And the shrubs, actually some of the shrubs, they are very common, especially in the hilly areas. The mites basically attacks this particular one, and it injects especially in any of the patient's body. So that is why this disease can basically burst, right? The second most important thing, guys, it is most common especially in the hilly areas. In the hilly areas, it is the most common type of disease, and as of now it is not a common type of disease. It is obviously as of now, but please try to remember it. Government of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has not recognized this particular disease as the rare or orphan disease. But even though it is bit rare, especially in India, right? So most common, especially in the hilly areas of India. I discussed each and everything in this regard, what exactly it is. In the Nagaland region, some of the persons and bacteria basic. You can also remember the name of it, bit awkward but not much important, right? So I discussed each and everything in this regard. Try to remember the vector of these such type of diseases as well. Let's move on to the next topic for today, guys. Vehicle scrappage policy and what exactly it is, what are the key provisions they have been mentioned under vehicle scrappage policy, and why it is really important for all of us to know about it, right? So guys, under the vehicle scrappage policy, government is very serious about it. And guys, the concerned ministry, try to remember the concerned ministry of the vehicle scrappage policy, right? Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, it is the key ministry that is concerned, that is having the authority to release this such type of policy. And the implementing agency, see, please try to remember that the implementing agency will also be the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, so that the pollution level can also decrease, right? So under it, guys, the pollution, to decrease down the pollution in any of the condition, that is the actual challenge for the government. So that is why they have basically launched this kind of policy. The most important and the only provision which is very important, guys, those all vehicles which they are in the operation for more than 15 years, they will be scrapped from the operation, and their operation will definitely be seized, right? It means they will cease to operate, especially in the country like India, because the policy will not allow it. It means what will be the actual effect of it, guys? Please try to remember the effect of this particular policy. Effects are more important because the government of India's obligation for the on the international forums as well as on the platforms, that is really important, and they are also the deciding things, especially the reputation and the efforts they have been made by government of India for the environmental conservation as well as for the protection as well as to decrease down the pollution in the environment, right? So I basically discussed about it, what exactly it is. So guys, what is the effect of it? Is effect, the most important effect, it is basically pollution level of the pollution, that will definitely decrease. Very important, level of the pollution, that will definitely be decreasing. The second most important thing, guys, by just decreasing down the level of the pollution, we can obviously achieve certain kind of targets. Which type of target, guys? INDC, you might have heard about it, intended nationally determined contributions. They have been fixed in the COP21 of the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. COP21 in the Paris, under the Paris Agreement, certain kind of INDCs they have been categorized for the developing and for the developed nation. They are different for the developing and developed nation. For as of now, India's INDC, it is to decrease down to 33 to 35% reduction in the CO2 level as compared to the year of 2005 level of the CO2 that was present in the environment. By which of the year? By the year of 2030, so that our pollution related death can be basically decreased, and our health burden, guys, health burden plus especially out of the pocket expenditure can decrease, and income level of the persons, that can basically remain constant, and the demand of the person can go high, so that ultimately the production in India can go up, as well as the environmental related obligations can also be fulfilled by the government of India, right? So these are some of the important type of things they have been mentioned under it. Ministry of Road Transport and Highways will be the actual implementing agency of it, and it is about to take the note. Please try to remember it. Yesterday I was also talking about the BS norms. BS norms are also important. BS norms, again I am going to repeat it, BS Bharat stage norms are really important. So if the old vehicles will be scrapped, especially from the operation, then it means the new vehicles like BS6 vehicles will be entering in the market of India, and again the automobile industry will be concerned about it. They will be launching the vehicles in India based on the BS6, and the vehicles will be based on the diesel particulate matter and selective catalytic reduction technology, so that the engine capacity can be different, and the emission standard and the SOx kind of norms like 10 ppm, that particular capacities, the BS6 vehicles will definitely be able to operate, and our pollution level, the level of our pollution especially in India, can also decrease. That is the only aim, that is the only and the most important aim for what government is basically aiming for, right? So I discussed each and everything in this regard, what exactly it is and what are the key things they have been mentioned under the vehicle scrappage policy, and why government is really serious about the vehicle scrappage, right? India's INDC, try to remember the INDC in INDC especially of the India, and because any of the statement can easily be put in the actual UPSC exam. So let's move on to the next topic for today, guys. It is IPO, initial public offer. What exactly it is and why it is really important. See guys, in India there are two type of markets. One is primary market, and the another one is, guys, the secondary market. See, another one is secondary market. Both of the markets are important. Under the primary market, guys, the equity it is basically released for the first time. So it means indirectly it can be considered as a fresh equity, right? Fresh equity. So equity, it is basically giving you the shareholding in any of the company. So if the equity it is basically released freshly or for the first time, then it is called as that type of market, it is called as primary market. And if equity it is basically traded again and again on any of the market, that is basically called as secondary market. The best example, it is the stock market. Again and again you can purchase any of the equity, you can sell any of the equity, especially in the share market. So the new equity will not be released in the secondary market. Under the primary market they are being released. So IPO it is basically an option. It gives the companies to the option to get the money from the shareholders, to get the money especially from the market, and initial public offer by the name, by just getting the name, you can easily get the meaning of this particular word. It means it actually puts the proposal before the public to purchase the equity of that particular company, so that it can get the money, right? And please try to remember it is a tool of primary market. And the second most important, one more specification related to primary market. And related to the primary market, one more important specification, try to remember it. Primary market, generally equity it is being collected, or the investment it is for the less than 1 year. Very important, less than 1 year. If the equity that is basically taken from the public, and the public offers are being made by any of the company, if it is for the less than 1 year, it will definitely fall under the edges of primary market, right? So guys, I discussed each and everything in this regard. Later on, after IPO, it is being followed by the FPO, follow-on public offer. If the fresh equity of any of the company has been released, and if the company was not able to get the enough money or the adequate money which was targeted by the company, then the further follow-on public offer it is basically released before the public, so that left alone the persons. So those all persons which they are interested, but due to the time constraint they haven't taken it, they can also take and purchase this particular equity, right? The third one, IPO, first it is basically released, then FPO it is released. It is being followed by the offer for sale. Very important, guys. It is directly purchased by the public. There is no access broker. But in case of the, guys, offer for sale. See, I am discussing certain kind of tools, can be asked in the UPSC as well. Offer for sale. Under the offer for sale, guys, the companies can basically get it. The equity it is basically given. Let's say this is basically company. It gives the equity to the brokers, and the further brokers are basically selling authorities. They are having the selling authority to the public. It means the direct equity it is not released before the public. By using the brokers, companies generally used to release the equity, right? So I hope you like the session. I have discussed each and everything in this regard, what all things are important, and guys, why IPOs are really important for a country like India. The companies which they just want to operate in the countries like in the developing country like India, they need to get the fresh capital in the present scenario, right? So I hope you have liked the session. Before to that, vehicle scrappage policy I have discussed in a very detailed type of way. Before to that, I have discussed the ScrubTyphus, very important, common in the hilly areas, and being brushted, the actual vector it is basically bacteria. Please try to remember it. Bacteria based disease. It is not a viral disease, bacteria based disease. So that is why it is really important, right? So before to that, I have discussed about the Disaster Management Act, the tier and the level of the institution. Please try to remember it. On the national level, NDMA it is being set up, and the Prime Minister it is the chairing authority of it. SDMA, then the SDMA it is being set up, and the District Disaster Management Authority, after to that it is being set up. So, and as a biological disaster, by using which of the provisions it can be basically declared, I have discussed in a very detailed type of way. And before to that, I have discussed the NPPA, CDSCO, and Drug Comptroller General of India falls under the aegis of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Having certain kind of powers, it can declare, it can basically launch as well as approve certain kind of drugs, especially in country like India, right? So before to that, I have discussed the NRI deposits and key components of the external debt and why it is important. The categorization of the external debt, it is really important. Try to remember these certain kind of things so that your conceptual clarity can become really good. So under the sovereign debt, try to remember the categorization, right? Sovereign debt and non-sovereign debt. Sovereign debt is that type of debt under which government is basically releasing the bond as well as securities in the foreign market to gain the foreign currency, so that they can get the money from the foreign market. Non-sovereign debt, government does not use to release the bonds as well as debentures or securities in the foreign market, right? So I hope you have liked the session. The short term as well as long term debt, I also discussed about that, right? So and one more thing guys, I also categorically discussed that NRI deposits, that is also forming it is also consisting the part of external debt, so it is also important. Try to remember it. So I hope you all like the session. I have discussed each and everything in this regard. Please try to share it with as much as students as it's possible. Subscribe to the IS network right at 7 p.m. in the evening. We generally used to discuss the daily basis current affairs so that all of the students can get the benefit. Alright guys, thank you for attending the class. Have a nice day, and we'll be meeting right at 7 p.m. right on the 21st of September. Till then, bye bye, take care, and good night to all of the students. Share it with all of the students. Subscribe to the IS network. Daily basis, we generally used to discuss the current affairs of the of Delhi, right? So alright guys, thank you for attending the class. Have a nice day, and make sure that